I am so excited about this interview. So I hope I don't flub it. Please take a seat. So I met Haviila, I think it was probably 6 or so years ago. I was given a chance to speak at a Langham Partners event in Phoenix, Arizona. And she's one of the, shining superstars of Langham. What Langham does is they work hard on educating, getting Ph.D. type education, people in the majority world who will continue to live and work and minister and train others in the majority world. And so Haviila is one of their superstars because she not only, you'll hear about it, but 2 of her books that I've got right here, a book on the Song of Solomon or Song of Songs, and a book on Ruth, which she lectured on last night. And I'm eager for you to hear about that and so much more from her. But we're going to start out with the basics. So would you tell everybody a little bit about you and your family and where you're from?
Good morning, everyone. It's so good to see hall this big, full of people. Numbers is something you associate with India, especially. Right, so this is really good. I come from Bangalore in South India. It's a city that I was born in and grew up in. And I was an only child till the age of about 12, and then we adopted a little boy. He was about 4 years old when he came in. And I'm married with 2 grown children. Our son married into the Bombay Jewish community, and they went on to live in Israel for 7 years. But just this last year, they've relocated for the long term, and so they brought with them our little 5-year-old Nathan. So that's the only grandchild I have. Our daughter is married and lives not far from here in Miami. So that is my family. 2 dogs. A golden retriever named Rahel and a Doberman Indie crossbreed called Leia, Rahel and Leia.
A lot of people in here are dog people. I saw Mike Moriarty up here. He is a really big dog guy. He used to have a dog that would go to the football games. They would take him to the football games, American football. And there's a kicking tee that you put the football on when you're kicking off. And his dog was trained to run out after the kickoff, grab the kicking tee in his mouth, and run off to the side. So we like dogs. That's popular.
I know.
All right. I've put up here a map of India and the surrounding region. You are from Bangalore, as you call it. Is that the same as Bengaluru?
Right. They've been particularly patriotic about renaming the cities back to the names that they had before the colonizer changed it all. So now what was Bombay is Mumbai, what was Madras is Chennai, and what was Bangalore is now Bengaluru. It doesn't stick though. Everybody still says Bangalore. Yeah.
All right. So
there's a little logic to renaming places, People use the name with the fewer syllables, just because we are naturally lazy. So Bengaluru has 4 syllables, whereas Bangalore can be said actually in 2 syllables. Bangalore, like that.
Easy. Efficient. Yes, that's the way we are here. The real name for Houston is Haviila. What's his stone? Very few people even know that. Most just call it Houston. 2
like
syllables,
that.
you're done. So Mumbai is Bombay, old name Bombay, but not as, yes, it's renamed. Chennai, you mentioned. And to help us orient, because we don't tend to know the other surrounding areas, Sri Lanka is off the coast of India in the south.
Right.
You've got Pakistan to the northwest, Nepal to the northeast. That's where Kathmandu is.
Right.
Bangladesh, also to the northeast. And then from there, you branch out into Iran, Afghanistan, China, and the Far East.
Myanmar is also quite a close neighbor. I say that because we get a lot of students from Myanmar to train in our seminary.
Okay, and that's over here, old Burma.
Burma.
Now Myanmar. Okay, so I got on YouTube and I found a clip of Bangalore so that we can get an idea of what your city looks like.
Right.
Okay? And you can we can stop it as we're going along, and you can comment like if we see your house. Okay. So this is your, does this look familiar to you?
That bridge does, yes.
And these look, that's a government
That's
building?
the government buildings.
And evidently do you ride the train?
The metro, no, not much, but it's very useful.
Okay.
Yeah, see, now you know what I mean about people.
Yeah. Lots of people. You got pretty parks.
These are old British buildings.
You got a football club over there. And you all drive on the left side of the road because of the colonizers.
Which is the correct side of the road. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Or so the colonizers thought. Let's see. I think this is basically a good bit of it. So, this is where you live?
Yes, that's where I live.
Okay. Now, let's pause for a moment. Are there a lot of street markets there?
Oh, yes. In fact, I think India has the highest number of shops in the world. And some of those shops can just be a large cupboard.
Really?
You know, the size of. Yeah.
So a large cupboard makes a shop.
Yeah.
And do you shop in those shops often?
Yeah, these could be places that are selling street food. So it's a cupboard on wheels. So sometimes, it's wonderful street food you get in Bangalore.
Okay, well, let's talk about food for a moment because that's a high priority in my life. What is typical food? This morning, if you had been home in Bangalore, what would you have had for breakfast?
I'd have had just boring old oats and milk, simply because I'm diabetic.
Okay.
But there's a whole lot of other breakfasts I could have had, cooked breakfast, including, my favorite might have been something like a crepe, the French crepe. It's made with rice flour and nice and crisp on the outside and soft and spongy on the inside. A little bit like your Ethiopian injera, something like that. And that comes with a little gravy on the side and filter coffee on the side.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Coffee and crepes. That sounds like that could be pretty good. Do you put sweet stuff in there?
No, this one's a savory.
Savory? Well, it's not as good as it could be. What is the weather like?
Bangalore has some of the best weather in the country, simply because we are on top of a plateau, the Deccan Plateau. And so because of the altitude, we have moderate temperatures right across the year. We speak in centigrade because of the colonizer. So it would be about 17, 18 degrees centigrade right now. But we're moving into the summer months. April and May are searing hot. And then the temperature goes up to around 32 degrees centigrade. But then it drops again once the monsoon comes in June. Okay,
so centigrade, for those of us who threw the shackles of the colonizer off before India did, we left the colonizers in the 1700s. We use Fahrenheit. So in the summers it's in the 90s. And in the winters, it rarely gets below 60, but it's cooler.
Yeah, it can go down to 13, 12 night temperatures.
Okay, which is in the 50s, I guess. All right. In terms of industry, I read on the internet that Bangalore is a big internet. Somebody called it the Silicon Valley of India. So you are internet access, you're all over that stuff?
All of that, yeah. It's not bad. In fact, wherever I go, if I ever ask for help with my computer, they look at me oddly. Like they're expecting me to fix their computers.
Okay. You are a Christian. I think now within India, we've got a large Hindu presence, right? We've got, are there Muslims in India? I would assume you've got some Buddhists as well.
Yes.
You've got Christians. You've got at least a Jewish community.
Oh, yes.
And are there any other faiths that we're missing, or is it pretty diverse?
It's the cradle of all the major religions in the world, really. So there's Hinduism, of course, that is millennia old. And there are two reform movements that broke off from Hinduism in about 300 or so BC. That's Buddhism and another one called Jainism, if you've heard of it. Okay, so those two. And then the Muslim invasion happened, and so we have Islam. In fact, we have the highest number of Muslims in any country, just behind Indonesia. Wow. So that's a very huge Muslim population. In pockets, maybe, not evenly dispersed. Then, of course, we have Christianity because it goes right back to the 1st century AD, when the Queen of Syria, who is thought to have converted to Christianity and been enthusiastic about missions, sent out missionaries with the trading ships. And as you saw in the map, the southern bit is a peninsula, and so it has port cities. And so the missionaries came in through the ports. So that was way back just after Christ. And so we have a community of the Syrian Orthodox Christians who take great pride in their Christian heritage, going back 2,000 years. And then we had French missionaries in the 1700s. And then, of course, we had the British 1800s and on. And so Christianity has a big presence in South India, the peninsular bit. And in our country, when we talk about cross-cultural missions, it's about South Indians going up into North India. Because the cultures are so different, perhaps. One reason for that is the Christian ethic that somehow underlies at least the urban parts of South India because of mission schools and mission hospitals. Yes, so we have that. So I think I've said all the religions we have.
Okay. It's interesting if you go back to Christ and the birth of Christ. The wise men bring gold, frankincense, and myrrh. It's a clear indication that there's already a very ready trade with the East.
Yeah.
And
in fact, the Jewish community, they largely are in the port towns, in the port cities. Some of them pride themselves on having arrived in the days of King Solomon even, or at least after the fall of Jerusalem in 587 BC. Yeah.
So, wow. So, and then there's also, I think, and I'm going back in my brain, I didn't refresh on this, but wasn't there an early church tradition that Thomas may have gone to India to do mission work as well, one of the 12 apostles?
Yeah, that's a very strong tradition, and those who are in that tradition are the Marthomites, the St. Thomas tradition, and he is said to have been martyred in Chennai, which was Madras. Yeah.
Okay, so you are, I believe you've told me, a 3rd-generation Christian. So your parents were Christians, your grandparents were Christians. How did you come to your faith?
Right. So, being an only child, I was dragged off to every meeting there was. We were in an indigenous Christian denomination, which had much to do with the Brethren tradition.
Brethren?
Yes.
Okay.
And so so wherever my parents went, I went. So if it was a revival meeting, an evangelistic meeting, a midweek meeting, I attended all of these. And especially at these gospel meetings, whenever the preacher said, put up your hands if you want to believe in Jesus, I put my hands up. From the time I knew how to put a hand up, really. And I had done this so often, but the fear of being left behind was a big one. The brethren tend to preach the fire and brimstone type gospel. Yeah, so I was a little nervous about God. And the idea that he might come any time in the middle of the night and I'd be left behind, that was something I was terrified of. Sometimes I tried to stay awake at night just to watch for, if he was going to be coming. Yeah, but when I was 12, and this was a gospel meeting again, somebody was preaching from Hebrews 2, isn't it? Where it says, how can we escape if we neglect so great a salvation? And said, escape. Escape is definitely what I want to do. So I put my hand up and I said, Jesus, this is the last time I'm putting my hand up, and this is it. And then I wrote it down in my Bible. And I think that's how I became a Christian. And then it was a couple of years, that was when I was 12. And so it was about 6 years before I was baptized, the believer's baptism. And it's been up and down, but it's been a journey getting to know the Lord better and to learn to love Jesus more and more.
So I'm interested in how you got where you are today, because where did you go to college when you first went to college?
The first master's degree I have is a degree in biochemistry. So I went the sciences route because my parents were persuaded that there was no money in pursuing the liberal arts or the humanities. So I went the sciences route. And I actually taught chemistry to 17 to 18-year-olds.
We would call them seniors in high school.
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
So I got to teach these sharp, fun teenagers for about a decade or more. And I was teaching chemistry, remember? So I began to be weary of chemistry because sciences really wasn't my thing. Anyway, if I could have done something else, it would have probably been English literature. And so then I began to hear that there were places you could actually study Old Testament. Do you want me to say how I... Yeah.
It's yours.
Yeah, when I was about 10, remember I was being hauled off to all these meetings. I used to go to this midweek Bible study meeting in church where there was this really wonderful Bible expositor who was doing Exodus. Not just the fun part, the movie parts of Exodus, This is after Pharaoh and all those things have happened. You get into the second part of Exodus and it's all about tabernacle construction and whatnot. But he made it come alive in such a way that I thought to myself, if I could do this, study this in college, how fun that would be. But I didn't know then, when I was 12, I didn't know that there were Bible colleges. I didn't know you could study this and devote your whole life to it. I didn't know that. In fact, that evening I remember when the Bible expositor said, now are there any questions? I put up my hand and I asked a question. And when I went home, my father said, never do that again. Women are not allowed to speak in church, he said. In fact, the Bible says, if you have questions, you should ask your husband at home. And I'm
thinking,
you're
10 years old.
And I'm thinking, it's going to be a long time. I better write it down. So. And so that's how I got interested in the Old Testament. But I never imagined that there would be an opportunity to learn it or even to teach it. But after I had done chemistry for about 10 years, and I began to be aware that there were excellent Bible colleges, seminaries in my town, Bangalore. And then with the encouragement of my husband, a wonderful man, and my mother, I got into Bible college. By this time, my father didn't mind too much, I don't think.
He loosened up a little bit.
Yeah. So that's how I went on to do an MA in Christian Studies, and then I went on to do a Ph.D. in Old Testament in the University of Durham in the UK because of support from an organization called the Langham Partnership. I'm a Langham scholar, and I'm so grateful to them. And actually, I should say a little anecdote there. The first time I put in my application, Langham Partnership UK had exhausted all its funds, allocated all its funds, and didn't have space for me. And then it was a month later, they wrote to me and said, no, I think we can sponsor you this year because there's some money that's come in from America, so I will never forget it. It was the generosity of people in this country that made my PhD possible.
Oh. Well, we were glad to do it. Not that we did it, but we'll take all the credit. I think it was this class's contribution to Langham Partnership. So you have, this is interesting. You learned Hebrew as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard to do.
And I can't say, I wish I'd learnt it when I was younger because I came to theological education as almost a second career. So that was in my mid-30s. So I've always been envious of those who did nothing but theology right through and didn't get distracted by biochemistry. I've been a bit envious about them. But I think just teaching all those sharp-minded teenagers, I think brings something to how I approach teaching itself and what I do in the classroom. And so I'm grateful to God. Nothing ever is without purpose in our lives, I think.
And that's wonderful. I was 17 when I started studying Hebrew.
See, I envy you.
Don't envy me because your Hebrew is so much better than mine ever was. I was thinking last night, so I was 18 when I first translated Ruth. And as you were talking last night, I was thinking that was, right after our first year. Ruth and the Joseph story were the two that we came right out and went after. But you have just done so well. So you go to the University of Durham. Had you been to to England before?
No. When I flew out to do my PhD, that's the first time I ever got on a plane and left the country.
Wow. And am I rude if I ask you how old you were?
34 I must have been then.
34.
It was a mid-career shift, yeah.
Did you eat fish and chips while you were there?
Oh, yes. Actually, the culture didn't bother me too much, because I grew up I was educated in a mission school, so we read nothing but British fiction, right from children's fiction on. So there wasn't a culture shock or anything. It was just that I expected everybody to speak in the BBC accent, and it was a horrible shock, especially when I went off into the northeast of England and heard Geordie. I said, my goodness, is this even English? Yeah, that's what I say when I come to America also, but yeah.
Yeah, we have a pretty bad accent here. And, my wife and I will watch a lot of British TV, and if we watch the shows that are from the north, from like Yorkshire North, and into Scotland, we have to have the English on down below.
The subtitles.
We can't do it without. So what made you get your Ph.D. in Old Testament studies? Why Old Testament?
Right. So that goes back to when I was 10, 12, when I was attending those midweek Bible studies. You never know where, those interests are going to take you. At age 10, it probably was just a wish, not even a prayer, just a wish. And I thought, I wish I could do this. And it's amazing how God brings things around in your lives so as to make even your wishes come true. He doesn't need us to be kneeling and clutching our hands and, praying desperately about anything. He listens to even our wishes.
I'm sensitive to that. Our daughter, Gracie. Gracie, are you in here? Gracie, would you stand up? This is our daughter, Gracie. Is she standing up? Our daughter, Gracie, wished that she had a child. She wished that she had a child. And she's about 2 months from having 4 children under the age of 4, all at once. She has the baby Zoe in her stomach, and she's got 3 other kids that are in the nursery right now, twin girls that are 20 months old and a 3-year-old. And God hears our wishes and our prayers and answers in abundance at times. I want to transition, and I want to take advantage of your knowledge and how you've grown in the Lord. And I want to talk about some scriptures with you, and then I want to hear some words of encouragement from you. You do teach at a college right now. Would you tell us about your job right now?
Right. I teach in a college set in some very beautiful grounds. It's called the South Asia Institute of Advanced Christian Studies. Advanced because we fill a niche. We do only master's level education. So we have the MA, and then we have the THM, and then our niche really is the doctoral programs that we do. We do a DMin, and then we do Ph.D. as well. So the smaller Bible colleges that do bachelor's level education are our feeders. What's really fun about the place in which I minister through teaching is that we are a trainer of trainers. So the students who come to us mostly are mature students, people who are already serving out there, either in the mission field or in other seminaries at mid-level leadership levels. Pastors, those who want to be Bible translators. So churches sponsor and organizations sponsor them to come to us. And so the work we do in equipping these people for this gamut of ministry is extremely rewarding, because you can see the results of it almost immediately. With teaching, for example, 60% of our graduates go off to teach in other Bible colleges, maybe at the bachelor's level. And within a couple of years, even within 3 or 4 years of that, those students may come to us at SAACS for a higher degree. And so I've met sometimes a new student who's come up to me and said, "Oh, ma'am, you teach just like my teacher back in whichever seminary they came from." And I'm thinking, that's because your teacher was my student. So I call them my grand students, and I have so many of them. And I rejoice that within maybe another 5 years, I might even have great-grand students. So it gives you so much satisfaction to be able to see your work being replicated across all the corners of that great big country, which really is a subcontinent. So our alumni are going off into Islamic context, into Buddhist context, because we have people serving even in Thailand and beyond. So it is a replicative work. It has a reach beyond what I can humanly achieve, simply because the work multiplies through our graduates every year.
I'm going to brag on you for a moment. She served for a period of time on the translation committee of the NIV. So if you've got an NIV, you are also sort of great-grandchildren students, at least the effects of all that you've done. Okay, so on our panel discussion Friday, you mentioned something that I want to talk about. You asked the question, in weddings in the United States, do people ever reference the Genesis passage that the two shall become one flesh? And I said, yes, they do. And you then said that sometimes there's a depth and a level of understanding that we may miss out if we just understand it by reading it with Western eyes. And I would love for you to walk through that with us and give me a chance to work through it with you in a little more detail. So why don't you, I'll put it up here for us to look at, and why don't you walk us through and I'll back up and say this. One of the biggest problems, this is so important, I'm standing up. One of the biggest, problem may not be the right word, but one of the biggest impediments to us more deeply understanding Scripture is we tend to read it with our 21st century Western mindset. And so many of these passages are so alien to a 21st century Western mindset. Rabbinical thought at the time of Jesus is in some ways so alien to the way we think that we run the risk of missing some of the depth of what's in the material. I think even before we get here, a classic example is the John 3:16 passage you talked about yesterday. So why don't we start with that, and then we'll go to the Genesis 2.
Right. John 3:16 is what they call a hot button text. And so Bible translators, I know the NIV Bible translators are a little cautious about rewording John 3:16 as we've received it through the King James family, which is God so loved the world. I'm no Greek scholar, but the Greek apparently is in favor of putting it like this. This is the way in which God loved the world. That He gave His only begotten Son. This is the way. So the so over there is not indicative of degree. God so loved the world, but it is God thus loved the world. And this is something that's passed on to us who haven't been sensitive to the way English words change in meaning across the centuries. So this has come to us from the King James family of versions. And so you will find that with more current translations, maybe the NET or the NLT, you'll have to look it up. The more current translations will say, this is the way in which God loved the world. He gave His only begotten Son. And you should read the context before and after to figure, where is John 3:16? What is the...
So the English Standard Version, for example, which is what I typically will teach out of, is that God so loved the world because they don't want to change that language that everybody grew up and memorized, but they'll drop this footnote. And that footnote 7 will say down at the bottom, or... for this is how God loved the world.
Yes.
So the so is not a so like it was so much. The so is in this manner. And they're trying to make that point without everybody saying we're never going to buy that translation because they messed up the most important verse in the Bible, which is the predicament that they're in. Yeah. So within a framework of that, I'd love for you to talk to us about the Genesis 2 passage.
Right. The Genesis 2 passage. I asked at the panel the other day, when this text is preached at weddings, the two shall become one flesh, what is the usual exposition on it? And Mark, you said?
So I think that when this is used in weddings, and I'd be interested to know your experience, but my experience has been that there are usually two ideas that are expressed. One idea is it's an expression of the sexual union between the two becoming one flesh. And the other idea is that it is a knitting of the hearts together so that, as Bob Dylan said, you are the other half of what I am. You're the missing piece. You together we make one type expression. Setting aside whether or not Bob Dylan made sense, which was a appropriate question you asked. The import of this verse is actually found within the context if we look a little bit deeper. So take us through it.
Right. I'm not totally setting aside those interpretations. We hear them all the time at Indian weddings. And the Bible is layered enough to accommodate that because, the earlier part of the story is of God looking at this first male human and saying it is not good that he should be alone. So these senses do come in. That's all right. But what might be the primary sense of this text? And for any text, you first look at the context, the literary context. What's before it, what's after it, to make sense of it. To follow the thought of the narrator, the author, you look at what goes before it and after it. I mean, that's what you do in a newspaper or in any communication. You wouldn't read just a line and say, oh, well, this is what it means. If you're wanting to know what it means, you read the paragraph before and the paragraph after. So we must do that with the biblical text as well. So now, flesh. The word flesh occurs in the verse just previous. And that's a little poem that the man puts out when he sees the woman. The man said, verse 23, "This now is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh, and she shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man." And that is why, and now the narrator steps back from the narrative. He almost freezes the narrative and steps out. We call it breaking frame. So he steps out and then makes a prescription to his readers. This is why, he says, a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. Why? Because of the poem that precedes it. Because of what the man said. He said, "This now is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh." Now this is a clearly idiomatic language. There is a certain literalness to it, of course, because the construction of the woman was through the taking of a rib, all of that. But it is a Hebrew idiom that occurs in other texts as well. And so we track the idiom first across the Old Testament, and we find it's quite frequent. For example, it's going to come in another story in Genesis. This is where Jacob is fleeing from his twin brother Esau and lands up back in Mesopotamia at the doors of his mother's brother, his uncle, Laban. And when Laban opens the doors and meets his nephew, hasn't seen him ever, he says to Jacob, "Well, you're welcome to come stay with me. You are," and this same idiom comes up. The idiom is bone and flesh. "You are my bone and flesh." In English, in the NIV, for example, you will have it rendered into the English idiom, which is flesh and blood. It's the same thing, flesh and blood. Bone and flesh in the Hebrew. "You are my bone and flesh," says Laban, to his nephew, Jacob. And then in the book of Judges, there is someone we might not be too familiar with, Gideon's son, a certain Abimelech, who is trying to gather votes and make himself king somewhere. So he goes off to his maternal town of Shechem, and he says to the people of Shechem, "Make me king over you. Am I not your bone and flesh?" he says. Another place could be when David is already crowned king over Judah. 7 years have lapsed. And now the northern tribes come to him and say, "Come, be our king also, because you are our bone and flesh." So now, think about the parties in all these examples I gave you. The two parties are male. Yeah? And it's quite different from, this particular context, which is a marriage context, a man and his wife. Those are male parties. What we're talking about when we talk about bone and flesh, or flesh and blood, is kinship relationships and kinship obligations. This is big. This has a very high value in collectivist societies which place a high value on community, and the opposite of individualistic. As I explained, that is why it's because of kinship obligations that you have so many Indians in America. Because the man who first comes here is now obliged to his kin to bring them all over to this land of milk and honey. Yeah?
Sure.
So he's obliged to any brothers or sisters he might have. He's obliged to the children of his brothers and sisters and their second cousins and their pet dogs. And it just goes on like that. Kinship obligations are really very high. And so that's why when a woman is married, she comes into this household of her husband as an outsider. An Indian mother is very likely to say to her newly married son, and you're listening to what this wife tells you? And how long have you known her? 3 months? Me? Have I not borne you in my belly for 9 months and then clothed you and fed you for 27 years? You see, so that's the competition. The incoming woman is always the outsider. She is from another family. She is not blood. She is not kin. And so that is where this text is now so countercultural. It's a shock even. It's saying once you're married, it's addressing the man because we're talking about patriarchal systems here. It's saying to the man, reorganize your kinship obligations. Who's sitting at the top of that pyramid of obligations? It's usually the patriarch of the family, the father, maybe an older brother. So that's not who your primary obligation should now be directed at. Revise that hierarchy. Who sits at the top of that pyramid now? Not even the father and the mother. It's the wife. That's something the Indian mind, really struggles to wrap its head around. So that's how countercultural this text is. It's talking about kinship obligations, and it's asking that the man reorganize his priorities totally so as to make his wife, who is usually culturally the outsider, the other, to make her his primary kin.
Okay.
All the women are clapping.
Primary kin. Well, the reason I wanted us to talk about this a little bit more today is because when Paul, who certainly understood his scriptures well, when Paul writes to the Ephesians about wives and husbands, he quotes this passage out of Genesis 2. He quotes the passage where it says, therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. And then having quoted this, adds, this mystery is profound, and I'm saying it refers to Christ and the church. However, or in addition, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. So Paul takes this idea that you've got and says, the outsider woman who's now fully in community and fully in kinship, in a primary role in the family, is what the church has become to the family of God through Christ. And that Christ has taken on that primary responsible role for seeing that we, as the bride of Christ, are fully in kinship and community with God and his kingdom. And understanding the greater depth of the Genesis passage ought to really confirm the love that Christ has for you and the love that he has for me, and his desire to see us made into something brand new that we would never be a part of if he had not done the work necessary. Fair?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, yeah, look, this is so much fun. We could do this all day long. We've got 7 more minutes. So here's what I'd like to do. I'd love some encouragement from you for us, but is there a way you could give us maybe one more passage that perhaps you have got some insight into that we might be missing? Is there another passage that...
This comes out of a small conversation I had after the lecture last night with someone who came up to me. So I thought maybe it's worth looking at that.
Where should I turn?
Let's see. 1 Kings 18. 1 Kings 18. Now 1 Kings 18 is set in the times of King Ahab and his Phoenician wife Jezebel, who has imported the worship of Baal into Israel and is serious about stamping out the worship of Yahweh in favor of the worship of Baal. So in this climate of persecution, severe and intense persecution, systematic persecution even, because Jezebel is killing off all the prophets one by one. She has a hit list that she's working through. So in this climate of persecution, there is a certain Obadiah who is in service to Ahab, who has quietly smuggled 100 prophets. This is 1 Kings 18:4. While Jezebel was killing off the Lord's prophets, Obadiah had taken 100 prophets and hidden them in 2 caves, 50 in each, and had supplied them with food and water. And then in the chapter just previous, in chapter 17, in the same climate of persecution, Elijah, who has just now appeared before Ahab and said there's not going to be any more rain. I mean, after that you can't expect to live. God's commanded him to hide himself. Here it is, in 17:3. Leave here, turn eastward and hide in the Kerith ravine east of the Jordan. You will drink from the brook, and I have directed the ravens to supply you with food there. So the expectation in persecution is that the Christian must stand up and let himself be counted. And if his head is going to get chopped off simply because he stood up, so be it. He is a martyr for Christ. I mean, we have these beautiful stories of martyrdom, of the martyrs that have come down to us down the millennia, and we rejoice in them. I come from a country in which right now it's putting your life at risk to stand up and resist. In some places much more than others. And I think we're going to have to continue in this situation for some time in the future. And so I want us to be sensitive to the fact that in the Bible, the one who is faithful to the Lord is not always asked to stand up and let his head be chopped off. We might think that that is the more Christian way, the more biblical way, and that is the way God wants in every situation. That's not so. There were prophets that were hidden in caves. There was Elijah himself that was asked to go and hide himself by the river Kerith on the other side of the Jordan. And then in the rest of the chapter, he's asked to even leave the country to go somewhere else up north and tide over this period of persecution. So there is both fight mode and flight mode. And neither of them is superior to the other or more to be commended than the other. Elijah himself is going to go into the fight mode in chapter 18 and the second half of chapter 18, where he's going to call for that contest on Mount Carmel, and he's going to stand up there to be counted. But there is a place for both. And so when we meet new believers or even seekers who are from a different faith background, whether Islamic or Hindu, it might not be necessary for us to say, all right, now forsake your family, especially if they are posing any opposition to you becoming a Christian. Don't encourage people to burn bridges. That is a poor testimony. It is possible to have other modes of being other than the fight mode. Yeah, to stay in the family, in your birth family, and be a testimony where you are in a quiet and gentle way is possibly more persuasive in terms of the gospel than, to say I'm leaving home and I'm going where my new community is. So that's something that I thought might be helpful.
That's a great example.
Especially in a country where, I don't think we know religious persecution as severely as in other parts of the world.
Yeah, so I listen to you, and I think in terms of my own life, there are... I was visiting yesterday afternoon with a gentleman who's going to be preaching in the next hour. And we were talking about a certain experience that he had had in his faith walk. And I had not had that experience. And he said to me, I think if you tend to talk so openly about what you experience, that if you had had my experience, you would tell everybody and you would lose your ministry. And he said, so I think God keeps you from that because he wants you in this place doing this at this time. And when he was talking, I was thinking in terms of law. And there are times where I can speak out in the legal community about my faith and have a very positive effect. But there are times where I'm just quiet and I bide my time. And I look for the time to speak and pray that I'll speak boldly at the right time.
Right.
But I also recognize that there are times where I don't need to be putting everybody's face in it. I need to just let them be.
Yeah, and we remember the same of Jesus, where there are times when he tells the people he has healed not to speak about it, because the time has not yet come for it to be revealed.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's not all just simple 1, 2, 3s. Life is a lot more complicated, and to listen to the Spirit, to pray for discernment, it's all part of growing up in the Lord, I guess. It's great. All right, would you join me in thanking Haviila for her time today? I know that a number of you will want to say hi to her and greet her, but let's be sensitive that there is a class that starts here in about 15 minutes or so. I'll bless you, and then we are through. Father, in the name of Jesus, I ask your blessings on our presence, and I thank you for Haviila, and I thank you for her ministry and her outreach and the way she is rearing generations to better understand you and to better guide and lead people in following you. It is our prayer that she has safe travels back today, and that you be with her till she gets home, and of course even afterwards, but keep her safe. And we thank you for this time that we've had with her, and what a blessing she is. We pray these things in your Son's name. Amen.